Star Wars has over 25,000 years of history baked into its universe. From the very first Force-sensitive monks to the rise and fall of entire galactic civilizations, every era builds on the one before it. Today, I'm breaking down every single era in Star Wars canon and everything that makes them matter, starting with a period so ancient, it makes the prequels look like yesterday's news. Dawn of the Jedi. 25,000 years before the Death Star, before the Empire, before the Republic, before lightsabers even existed. That's how far back this goes. The dawn of the Jedi era sits at roughly 25,025 BBY, and it's the absolute starting point of everything we know in Star Wars. Here's the thing most people get wrong about the Jedi. They weren't founded as warriors. They weren't generals. The original Jedi Order was a spiritual philosophy, plain and simple. The Prime Jedi established the Order as a way to understand and protect life through the Force. Before that, a religious group called the Dai Bendu laid the philosophical groundwork. Think monks, not soldiers. The contrast between that and the armored generals leading clone armies in the prequels is honestly staggering. And here's a detail that will break your brain if you've watched Ahsoka or the Clone Wars. Huyang, that ancient architect droid who teaches younglings how to build their lightsabers, he was built during this era. That means he's literally older than the Jedi Order as we know it. He's been around for over 25,000 years, just casually helping kids build laser swords. But here's where it gets frustrating. Despite being the origin of literally everything in Star Wars, almost zero canonical stories have been told in this era. It's one of the biggest blank spots in the entire franchise. Some fans find that maddening. Others think the mystery is exactly what makes it powerful. Either way, it's a foundation built almost entirely on silence. And that silence doesn't last forever, because the era that follows it. It's where the Sith are born, and everything starts falling apart. The Old Republic. This era spans roughly 20,000 years of galactic history. 20,000. And for most of that time, things were relatively stable. The core worlds formed alliances, the Republic took shape, and the Jedi Order grew into the dominant peacekeeping force in the galaxy. But about 15,000 years in, something fractured. A group of Force users broke away from the Jedi, embraced the dark side, and formed the Sith Order. From that moment on, the galaxy was locked in a cycle of war that repeated over and over again. Now here's the thing. Most of what we know about this era comes from Legends material. Games like Knights of the Old Republic, characters like Revan, entire wars and civilizations that fans spent decades falling in love with. None of it is technically canon anymore. Disney wiped the slate. But what is canon is arguably the most important figure in all of Star Wars history, Darth Bane. Bane is canon, the Rule of Two is canon. He appeared as a vision in the Clone Wars, confirmed as the Sith Lord who created the doctrine that would define the Order for 1,000 years. After centuries of the Sith throwing armies at the Jedi and losing, Bane realized the problem wasn't power, it was numbers. Too many Sith meant too much infighting, too much ego, too much weakness. So he destroyed the existing Sith Order and rebuilt it as exactly two people, one master, one apprentice. And the Jedi, they celebrated. They were so confident the Sith were extinct that they built their famous temple on Coruscant directly on top of an ancient Sith shrine, which tells you everything about how the next 1,000 years went. Because Bane's plan wasn't about winning a battle, it was about winning a war that would take a millennium to fight. Two Sith hiding in the shadows, passing knowledge from master to apprentice, generation after generation, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Jedi had zero idea any of it was happening, and the next era is where that false confidence starts to show cracks. The High Republic. After thousands of years of Sith wars, galaxy-wide devastation, and constant existential threats, the galaxy finally got to breathe. And honestly, it was beautiful. The High Republic era spans roughly 500 to 100 BBY, and it represents the absolute peak of everything the Jedi and the Republic ever built. The galaxy is thriving. The Jedi Order is at its most open, most diverse, and most connected to the Force it's ever been. And the Republic is actively pushing outward into the Outer Rim in what's called the Age of Exploration. This isn't a galaxy at war, this is a galaxy expanding, building, and genuinely trying to make things better. The crown jewel of this whole era was the Starlight Beacon, a massive space station launched in 232 BBY that served as a communications hub, a Jedi outpost, and a symbol of galactic hope, all rolled into one. Think of it as a lighthouse sitting at the edge of known civilization, broadcasting a message to every uncharted system. We're here. You're not alone. It's genuinely one of the most optimistic things Star Wars has ever created. But this is still Star Wars, so of course something tried to ruin it. Enter the Nihil, a chaotic gang of marauders who were less organized military and more space pirates on hallucinogens with hyperspace technology nobody understood. From 232 to 228 BBY, the Nihil waged a brutal campaign across the Outer Rim, eventually creating a blockade called the Storm Wall around a region known as the Occlusion Zone. They literally carved out a chunk of the galaxy and said, "This is ours now." Here's what makes this era truly unique, though. It's the only major period in Star Wars that was deliberately built around optimism instead of conflict. Every other era is defined by its wars. The High Republic exists specifically to show you what the galaxy looked like when things were good, which makes everything that comes after hit so much harder. One more thing worth knowing: almost everything in this era has been told through novels, comics, and audio dramas rather than films or major shows. That's kept it under the radar for casual fans, but the canonical consistency is rock solid. It's arguably the most carefully constructed era in modern Star Wars storytelling. And that golden age? It didn't last, because the next era shows exactly how 1,000 years of peace gets dismantled in just 13. Fall of the Jedi. 13 years. That's all it took to destroy everything the previous eras built. 1,000 years of peace, a galaxy-spanning democracy, an entire order of Force-wielding guardians, all of it gone in just over a decade. And the worst part? The whole thing was rigged from the start. The fall of the Jedi era spans from 32 to 19 BBY, and it moves at a pace that makes every other era look like it's standing still. It begins with the Separatist Crisis, where thousands of star systems started breaking away from the Republic under Count Dooku's leadership. Tensions escalated, diplomacy failed, and by 22 BBY, the first Battle of Geonosis kicked off the Clone Wars. 3 years of galaxy-wide industrial-scale warfare between the Republic's clone army and the Separatist droid forces. But here's the thing, none of it was real. Darth Sidious, also known as Chancellor Palpatine, was running both sides simultaneously. He was leading the Republic as its elected leader, while secretly funding and directing the Separatists through Dooku, who was his Sith apprentice. The entire Clone Wars was a staged con, the most elaborate political manipulation in galactic history, designed for one specific purpose: to force the Jedi out of their temples and into military command roles where they'd be exposed, exhausted, and surrounded by soldiers they trusted completely. Soldiers who had a hidden behavioral modification chip implanted in their brains at birth. In 19 BBY, Palpatine executed Order 66. Across the entire galaxy, clone troopers turned on their Jedi generals simultaneously. Thousands of Jedi were gunned down by the soldiers who had fought beside them for 3 years. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker, just 22 years old, pledged himself to the Sith, became Darth Vader, marched into the Jedi Temple, and killed younglings. That detail still lands like a gut punch every single time it comes up. Because it should. That same year, the Galactic Republic ceased to exist. In a single Senate session, Palpatine declared himself emperor, and a democracy that had stood for roughly 1,000 years voted itself out of existence. Padme Amidala said it best, "So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause." But the Empire wasn't just content with seizing power. It needed to make sure nobody could ever challenge it. Reign of the Empire. For 24 years, the galaxy lived under a boot, and that boot had a plan. When Palpatine reorganized the Republic into the Galactic Empire in 19 BBY, he didn't just change the name on the letterhead, he took the largest military apparatus the galaxy had ever assembled and turned it into something genuinely terrifying. Star destroyers replaced diplomatic cruisers, stormtroopers replaced clone soldiers, and every single system in the galaxy got a very clear message: fall in line or get erased. But here's the thing, the Empire's real weapon was never the fleet. Grand Moff Tarkin codified the entire governing philosophy into something called the Doctrine of Terror. The idea was simple. You don't actually need to destroy every planet that resists you. You just need everyone to believe you will. Fear of overwhelming force is cheaper and more efficient than deploying it. The Death Star wasn't built to blow up planets. It was built so that nobody would ever dare resist in the first place. The fact that they used it on Alderaan wasn't the plan working, it was the plan failing. Meanwhile, the Great Jedi Purge was finishing what Order 66 started. The Jedi Order once had roughly 10,000 members spread across the galaxy. By the height of the Empire, you could count the known survivors on your hands. Yoda hiding in a swamp, Obi-Wan wasting away on Tatooine, a scattered handful of others running, hiding, trying not to get hunted down by Inquisitors. An entire civilization of peacekeepers, functionally extinct within a generation. But here's where it gets really interesting. Palpatine, the most paranoid man alive, was already planning for the Empire's failure while sitting on its throne. He secretly constructed an entire hidden fleet in the unknown regions called the Final Order. Thousands of star destroyers, each one equipped with planet-killing weaponry. A full contingency plan to build a new Sith Empire if the current one collapsed. Most people don't learn about this until the sequel era, but Palpatine was running a backup plan from day one. Imperial rule officially ended at the Battle of Jakku in 5 ABY, roughly a year after the Emperor died at Endor. And here's the wild part. That battle, the one that actually determined the outcome of the entire galactic civil war, doesn't appear in any of the films. The real end of the Empire happened completely off-screen, but the galaxy's problems were far from over. Because what replaced the Empire might have been even less prepared for what was coming. Age of Rebellion. This is it. This is the era. When most people close their eyes and think of Star Wars, they're thinking about these 4 years, not the Clone Wars, not the High Republic. This tiny window from 0 to 4 ABY contains virtually every iconic moment the franchise has ever produced, and it technically overlaps with the Imperial era we just covered. But it deserves its own spotlight because nothing else in this timeline carries the same weight. It starts with sacrifice. The Battle of Scarif, depicted in Rogue One, saw a volunteer strike team infiltrate an Imperial facility to steal the Death Star plans. Nearly every single member of that team died. Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor, the entire Rogue One crew, gone. They never lived to see what their sacrifice made possible, but without them, there's no stolen blueprint, no thermal exhaust port weakness, no shot for Luke Skywalker to take. Everything that follows exists because of people who didn't survive to see it. But here's where it gets interesting. The Rebel Alliance as a formal unified organization, that didn't come together until 2 BBY. Mon Mothma issued the Declaration of Rebellion following the Gorman massacre, officially unifying the scattered rebel cells into one coordinated movement, which means the Alliance had only existed as a single entity for about 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. Luke Skywalker fired the most important shot in galactic history for an organization that was barely old enough to have its act together. 4 years after Yavin, everything ends. The Battle of Endor in 4 ABY killed Emperor Palpatine, redeemed Darth Vader, destroyed the second Death Star, and shattered the Empire's grip on the galaxy. 4 years, 2 Death Stars, 1 farm boy from Tatooine. The galaxy changed permanently. And here's the thing, this era isn't just living on nostalgia. Andor proved that there's still massive storytelling potential hiding inside this window. A spy thriller about the cost of revolution, set entirely within the Rebellion era, became one of the most critically acclaimed Star Wars projects ever made. Rogue One did the same thing years earlier. The original trilogy is the emotional foundation that every other Star Wars era is built on, and creators keep finding new stories worth telling inside it. But the Empire didn't just vanish after Endor. What came next was supposed to be a new golden age for the galaxy, and instead, it became a slow-motion disaster, the New Republic. This is the era that hurts the most. Not because of some epic betrayal or ancient evil, because the good guys won, and then they just let it slip away. The New Republic officially began in 5 ABY with the signing of the Galactic Concordance. The Empire was beaten. Their military was restricted. The galaxy finally had its democratic government back after decades of tyranny. For the first time since Palpatine dissolved the Senate, free worlds could govern themselves again, and for a while it worked. But here's where it gets complicated. The New Republic Senate split into 2 factions that absolutely despised each other. The populists wanted planetary independence, individual worlds making their own decisions. The centrists wanted strong central authority, a powerful government that could actually enforce galactic law. And neither side would budge, not an inch. The result was complete political deadlock. The Senate couldn't agree on anything meaningful, couldn't pass critical legislation, and couldn't respond to threats even when those threats were staring them directly in the face. Because while the Senate was busy arguing with itself, Imperial remnants had fled to the unknown regions and were quietly building a new military superpower called the First Order. And nobody in the Republic cared enough to stop it. Nobody except Leia Organa. Leia, the woman who helped destroy 2 Death Stars, who was instrumental in toppling the entire galactic empire, literally could not convince her own government that the First Order was dangerous. The Senate dismissed her warnings. They called her an alarmist. So, in approximately 29 ABY, she did the only thing she could. She founded the Resistance, a private military force funded outside official channels because the democratic government she'd spent her entire life fighting for refused to protect itself. Let that sink in. The hero of the rebellion had to build a second rebellion because the republic she created wouldn't listen. And then came 34 ABY Starkiller Base fired. Hosnian Prime, the New Republic's capital, was vaporized in seconds. The Senate, the fleet, the entire central government gone. 29 years of democracy erased in a single blast. Most casual fans don't fully register what that moment actually represents. That wasn't just a planet being destroyed. That was the complete annihilation of galactic governance. Every senator, Every military commander, every institution that held the Republic together, wiped from existence. The brutal irony is almost too perfect. They spent decades fighting for freedom. They bled for it. They watched friends die for it. They built their democracy, and then they watched it rot from the inside out through complacency and partisan gridlock. And before they could ever course correct, it was gone. 29 years. That's all they got. The Empire lasted 24. The New Republic barely outlived the thing it replaced. And unlike the Empire, which fell because people fought against it, the New Republic fell because nobody fought for it when it mattered. But if the Republic's collapse feels frustrating, wait until you see what rose from its ashes, because the First Order didn't just fill a power vacuum, they were designed to rise of the First Order. Here's where the Star Wars timeline starts feeling less like history and more like a conspiracy board with red string connecting everything. The First Order didn't just appear out of nowhere, it was built in layers, over years, right under the New Republic's nose. When the centrist faction in the Senate officially seceded in 28 ABY, that was just the public-facing move. Behind the scenes, these loyalists had already been retreating to the unknown regions, quietly building a war machine that would make the old empire jealous. They had fleets, they had stormtrooper programs, they had infrastructure, all hidden in uncharted space where nobody was looking. And the New Republic, they let it happen. The centrists maintained political influence inside the Senate the entire time, feeding intelligence back while their allies militarized in secret. Leia Organa saw it coming. She literally founded the resistance because the Senate refused to act. Nobody listened. Then came the opening move. Starkiller Base, not a space station, a planet. An entire planet converted into a superweapon that drained a star to power its main cannon. And its first target was Hosnian Prime, the New Republic's capital. One shot. The entire system, gone. The galactic government, gone. The First Order wasn't hiding anymore, and there was almost nothing left to fight back. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Supreme Leader Snoke, the guy supposedly running the entire First Order, the mastermind behind all of it, he was a puppet, literally. Snoke was a strandcast, a biologically engineered body grown in a lab and controlled remotely by Darth Sidious, Palpatine, the Emperor who everyone watched fall down a reactor shaft on the second Death Star. He faked his death, transferred his consciousness to a cloned body on Exegol, and spent the next 3 decades pulling strings from the shadows. Let that sink in for a second. Palpatine was simultaneously running the First Order through a sock puppet and building an entirely separate fleet called the Final Order on Exegol. 2 parallel Empire restoration schemes operating at the same time across decades. One was the public threat designed to conquer the galaxy through military force. The other was a hidden armada of planet-killing star destroyers waiting in reserve. If one failed, the other was ready. That's not just evil. That's project management on a galactic scale. The First Order conquered most of the known galaxy within a single year of revealing itself. 1 year. That either speaks to their overwhelming military power or to how catastrophically the New Republic had gutted its own defenses after the Galactic Concordance. Probably both. A government so afraid of becoming the next empire that it disarmed itself into extinction. But the real terrifying part isn't the First Order. It's that everything, Snoke, the fleet, the political infiltration, all of it was just one arm of a dead man's contingency plan, and the other arm was waiting on Exegol, ready to finish what the First Order started. New Jedi Order, 25,000 years, that's how long the story has been building. From the Prime Jedi meditating on a mosaic floor, to Darth Bane standing in the ashes of 1,000 dead Sith Lords and whispering, "Now there are 2, to a girl standing on a dead planet called Exegol, with the weight of every Jedi who ever lived flowing through her." This is where it all lands. In 35 ABY, the Battle of Exegol brought everything to a head. Darth Sidious, the final product of Bane's 1,000-year plan, revealed himself one last time. He had the Sith Eternal Fleet, he had a cult, he had literal lightning that could disable an entire armada. And Rey, a nobody who turned out to be his granddaughter, faced him anyway. She called on the voices of every Jedi before her: Obi-Wan, Anakin, Yoda, Mace Windu, Ahsoka, Kanan, all of them. And with that combined strength, she destroyed him. Not just Sidious the man, but the rule of 2 itself. The chain that started at Ruusan, that survived a millennium of hiding, that toppled the Republic and nearly consumed the galaxy twice over, gone. But it cost her everything. Rey died from the effort, and then Ben Solo, the man who had spent years as Kylo Ren terrorizing the galaxy, burning down everything his family built, made a choice. He used his remaining life force to bring her back. He saved the person he had tried to destroy, and then he vanished into the Force, the same way his mother had, the same way his uncle had. The Skywalker saga's central question was always whether someone who falls to the dark side can come back. Ben answered it. Across the galaxy, something else happened simultaneously. Ordinary people rose up, not Jedi, not senators, not generals. Regular citizens on worlds throughout the galaxy attacked First Order remnants, echoing the original rebellion in a way that felt completely deliberate. The message was clear. The fight was never about one family. It was about everyone. Then came the quiet moment. Rey traveled to Tatooine, to the Lars Moisture farm, where this entire saga started over 40 years ago in real-world time. She buried Anakin's lightsaber and Leia's lightsaber in the sand, a memorial to 3 generations of Skywalkers, on the planet where a slave boy once looked up at twin suns and dreamed of something bigger. A stranger asked her name, and she said Skywalker. That choice is arguably the most important beat in the entire era. Rey has zero biological connection to the Skywalker family. She's a Palpatine by blood, but she chose the name anyway because the Skywalker legacy was never about genetics. It was about what you stood for: hope over fear, light over dark, the choice to be better than where you came from. That's the thesis statement of the entire 9-film saga, delivered in a single word on a desert planet. Now, this era is deeply divisive. Fans argue about Rey's arc, Ben's sacrifice, whether the sequel trilogy earned its ending or stumbled into it. Those debates are real, and they're valid. But whatever you think about the execution, this is where the Skywalker saga officially closes. Bane's millennium of scheming, Palpatine's decades of manipulation, the Empire, the First Order, all of it finished. The Jedi begin again. Whether that's a satisfying ending or just the start of the next cycle is the question Star Wars will probably be asking for another 25,000 years. But for now, the twin suns set on Tatooine, and the story rests. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.